my meal. Hall of Fame wrestler, created with the feel. Son of a boxer, comic book artist. Sweet science cinema, know what my favorite part is? The whole thing. From the great white hype to Rocky and Creed, the Raging Bull. Oh no, I shouldn't spoil it. Come check out this episode and you'll find yourself enjoying it. Sweet science cinema. Sweet science cinema.
And there's the bell. What's good, y'all? Kush Hayes here, coming to you. Sweet Science Cinema number 4. With me, as always, Pro Wrestling Hall of Famer Jaimel Hemphill. How you doing today, buddy?
I'm good, man. Just every time you say that, it makes me want to get a little humbler. So that's weird. But great to be here, man. Good to see you. Yeah,
good to see you too, man.
For our guest today.
As of this recording, I just got my second microchip 2 Fridays ago, and it was the best case scenario. Just nothing. Like I took your advice. I got many fluids. Took our guest's advice, lots of vitamin C, and then just tried to ride it out. But I'm glad that is behind us. As I just said, Jaimel, we got a guest tonight. He's a director. He's directed such titles as Blood Prism, Challenge of the Five Gauntlets. He's also the co-host of the Kick-Ass Movie Podcast. We're talking to director Len Kabasinski. How you doing, Len?
I am doing great, fellas. Thank you so much for thinking of my works and having me on here. I'm excited to talk about this one. So, I'm in the middle of a busy summer. You know, I started filming my film Pact of Vengeance, which co-stars L.A., California guy, martial art legend himself, as well as boxing legend, Mr. Leo Fong. Nice. So he's in it. John Mickle Thor from Rock and Roll Nightmare, one of maybe my favorite soundtrack of all time. One of the great good, bad, fun movies of all time, Rock and Roll Nightmare there. So, we got some AEW wrestlers in it. We got Diamante from AEW, and as well as Pretty Peter Avalon from AEW. So, I'll be filming with those guys in about a month. And we filmed maybe 20% of the movie at this point. And it's good to get back to things. I know everything's not super normal yet, but it's getting there, my man. So I'm happy that, when I had last summer off, I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? I film every year, you know what I mean? And it was weird to just not work. I mean, as you know, I work at a hospital. That's my day job. But in film, I'm always filming something every year. And last year was my first year off in like seven years or so. So I'm back into it.
There's a lot of missed shifts in purpose for everybody this last 14 months. So glad to see that things are back. It's a step in the right direction. The COVID subsided. Len Kabasinski's making movies. And first off, Len, what is Pact of Vengeance about?
Pact of Vengeance is kind of a beat up the neighborhood 80s style movie, like a Death Wish 3 kind of thing. What it involves is Leo Fong's character owns an auto body shop, and he's passed it down to his granddaughter in the tough inner city area. And she's, taken over the auto body shop, and they're doing well. But now the Black Roses, this gang comes in and is kind of shaking down the neighborhood, and they refuse to pay them protection money, if you will. They assault his granddaughter and leave her for dead, kind of thing. And a special forces group that Leo ran in the military called the Obliterators comes in, and his pals take out the neighborhood kind of thing. So it's an 80s style action film, much like pictures like The Exterminator 2 or as I mentioned, Death Wish 3, that kind of stuff. So
You said John Mickle Thor's in the movie. Does he have any influence on the soundtrack?
Yes, John Mickle Thor is donating 3 songs. I'm not sure which ones yet, but 3 songs are going to be of his band Thor will be in Pact of Vengeance there. So I just talked to him less than a week ago.
And it's going to be on your Patreon account, VOD. Are we going to get a theatrical release? Maybe? Who
knows? I mean, I don't know who I'm going to sign it with yet, but much like I do, and I've done since you mentioned Blood Prism. That came out, 4 years ago? Hard to believe, right? But 4 years ago. That debuted on Patreon for the first time, and then I signed it with the distributor afterwards. It'll be no different. People that support me on Patreon, they'll get to watch the movie first. Anybody on it will get to see behind-the-scenes videos and pics and things like that. Pics that I'm not putting on Twitter or Facebook or those kinds of things. So I gotta, my Patreon support me, and in turn, I want to give them stuff that other people don't get. So I'll take care of them too.
You got an estimated data release, or is that too early?
Too early, but I would say it's going to be like springtime. It would come out in next year in the spring, early spring next year.
That's what's up.
So, but something I also forgot to tell you, kind of more important than movie stuff, more like real life stuff. But I am no longer Sensei Len. Now I am Master Len. I got my master's rank in martial arts. I got my 4th degree black belt 2 months ago, and so now I am Master Len.
Congratulations, man. That's an accomplishment. That takes
so
a lot of dedication. I mean, I can't express as a fan of martial arts and a student of martial arts, and knowing people who still, various judokas and people who are in BJJ and everything, I understand, what it takes, the dedication. I want to explain to our listeners just how big a thing that is. So congratulations, well deserved, Wilmer.
I very much appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do either of you guys have that friend who travels a lot?
Of course. But everybody, the one you never can hang out with. Yeah.
I suppose so. I had a friend who spent a year in Spain and then came back and he was like, yo, man, what the fuck is Invicto? And I was like, I don't know, dude. I don't speak Portuguese. He then explained it to me. He said, Walter Hill, the guy responsible for 48 Hours, The Warriors, Brewster's Millions. He's got a boxing prison movie starring Wesley Snipes, Ving Rhams, Peter Falk, Michael Rooker, Wes Studi, and Fisher Stevens. And I'm like, this sounds amazing.
Right?
I end up going on a way to finally rent it when I do see it. That's maybe, who knows when it is. It's later down the line. It is a DVD rental. And I am sorry to say that it is underwhelming.
Yeah.
I picked it for this movie because when you have a lineup that strong, this thing should be knocking it out of the park. However, it doesn't feel like it knows what it wants to be. Does that sound right, guys? What did you guys think of it, first of all?
I put it in the Fifth Element bucket. Fifth Element is like this close to being Star Wars, right? It's like this close. There's something, I don't know what it is, but it's missing some tiny thing that doesn't make it one of the biggest, greatest movies of all time. And I think with Fifth Element, it just came out at the wrong time. If Fifth Element came out in the 80s or the 70s, maybe you wouldn't have as good special effects, but that was the right time for that movie to be Star Wars, to be this big, massive juggernaut of a thing. And it just wasn't, people weren't into that like brightly colored, super trippy, happy-go-lucky romp space adventure that would have been really at home in like 1988. And I think that's what Undisputed, like you said, like look at the lineup. Like Walter Hill wins me because The Warriors is probably top 3 all-time movies. I don't get why. Don't make me explain it, but The Warriors is top 3 movies for me all time. I literally own it on 4 different formats. I love that movie. So the lineup, the director, the soundtrack. If you spend enough money to get Lil Wayne and Master P to appear in the first 5 minutes of your movie in 2004? 2002. That's a lot of money, right? Like Master P and Lil Wayne may not be my cup of tea, but I understand that putting them on a soundtrack and paying them to make music for you in 2002 means you expect to make a lot of money off this movie. And like you said, it's missing one little thing. For me, I think the movie goes too hard to need a good guy and a bad guy. Like Ving Rhames' champion is too much of an a-hole right from the jump. The movie could have been the same thing with the like we'll get deeper into why they fight and everything, but there's a character that wants them to fight, and that's enough. Him manipulating them into the fight, especially when they explain where he goes to both people and tries to get them in on the fight and gives them reasons to get out or reasons to fight. That's enough. You don't need Ving Rhames to be a complete jerk. Like the entire movie, he's like beating people up for no reason. Like for me, that's what takes it from amazing to like middle of the road. Because like the character it's unreasonable. Like we had this happen, right? In real life. Mike Tyson got into some legal trouble for exactly this type of crime. He went to jail. He didn't knock everybody out. He minded his own business and got out. Like it doesn't make sense, especially for a professional boxer. I was feeling bad for his knuckles the whole movie. Like, are you really punching everybody with a bare knuckle? And you're like a guy who knocks people out. You're a knockout puncher, and your knuckles survived knocking out 5 guys in a brawl. Like, really? He's okay? Okay, all right, go figure.
I think, again, I'm with you guys on this. I thought it was underwhelming. I'll say below average, maybe. And we see the talent involved. We all know they've done bigger and better things, but they've also done lesser things and still been successful in them, in terms of lesser budgets and stuff like that. So I think Walter Hill at this point in his career, though, as a director, was running out of gas kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
He had a really bad studio experience with a movie called Supernova that was kind of taken out from under him, and it really gave him a sour taste in his mouth as they recut it. He took his name off of it, used a pseudonym. I forget which one he used. Thomas Lee, there you go. And Supernova probably should have been really awesome. And I think Walter Hill thought it was awesome until they butchered it and took over kind of thing. So at this point in his career, I mean, we can count on maybe one hand the movies he's directed since Undisputed. And, you know, the thing is, though, when you have the talent and you do movies like The Long Riders, I don't know if you guys have seen that from the early 80s with the Carradine brothers. And it's noted for having a lot of brothers in it, Quaids, Carradines, Keaches, they're all in The Long Riders. It's a really good Western. Walter Hill did that. Walter Hill did Red Heat with Arnold Schwarzenegger and James Belushi. Good movie.
Don't play chicken with the bus.
Don't play chicken with the bus. He's done a 48 hours. We won't talk about another 48 hours, but that doesn't mean the first one wasn't good. 48 hours is pretty good. After he did Undisputed, this movie bombed, and I think it's because just the studios were sick of him, I think. But I really, really enjoyed the Sylvester Stallone movie, Bullet to the Head. Now, maybe that was just me. Bullet to the Head was such an 80s film, even though it was filmed in 2011, 2012 or whatever. But I think they got the feel and stuff down. And that's where I think Undisputed fails. This doesn't feel, they kept pushing it and promoting it as this is real boxing. This feels what a boxing movie should be. I don't know about that. I'm not a boxing expert, but I've seen a boxing movie or two. I think in terms of choreography and stuff in Undisputed, yeah, I could see it. I mean, Rocky is cartoon boxing. It's comic book stuff. You know what I mean? You could not get punched 35 times in the head by Dolph Lundgren, who's 2 feet taller than you and things like that, and survive. You just wouldn't. But it's a different feel. So I felt the boxing and fights were okay in Undisputed. I think the final fight with the two is pretty good and actually kind of exciting. But Walter Hill, I just think at this point in his career was out of gas. And in this movie, where I wish it would have been more of an exploitation film like Penitentiary or any Penitentiary, 1, 2, or 3. I love them all. So with Lee and Isaac Kennedy there and stuff like that. I believe Ernie Hudson's in the second one, who went on to Ghostbusters and things like that. But Penitentiary has kind of that dirty, grimy, sleazy feel and things like that. And when they talked about doing Undisputed, they're like, well, we had this one prison location, but we nixed it and went to another one because it was too nice looking and stuff like that. Well, get down and dirty then, man, if that's what you're going for. And I didn't feel that in this movie. I feel it's a movie that there was a gear they were trying to get to, but couldn't shift to it and didn't know maybe even how to drive stick. I don't know. So, right. I wish it would have went to an exploitation angle and things like that, which it obviously didn't go to.
It has a hard time identifying what it is. At one point, it's trying to be dark and grounded and realistic, but then we've got a 25 squared ring cage in the middle of they have their own arena that fits a minimum 500 convicts. It houses nearly 700, so you have to imagine some people are in the kitchen that night. But
yeah, I'll say one thing, not to interrupt you, Kush, but one thing that stood out really glaring to me is they're trying to set up Wesley Snipes' background and stuff like that. I mean, those are really, for somebody like Walter Hill, big, budget production kind of thing, his flashbacks are really cheap looking. I mean, he's beating guys and is the champ. He's in arena with like 10 people in the background. There's no extras. You don't see the arena, but yet you can kind of see the background in certain shots. Man, don't do that because it looks terrible. So I just thought, man, for setting him up as this big badass who's got all these accolades coming, it looks like he's fighting in a bar or something like that. It was really, the flashbacks I thought were really poor. Obviously him and one of the producers, I believe, of this movie, I forget which one, started talking about the Mike Tyson thing, because I think it actually is not a good thing for this movie, because we all know this is like a Mike Tyson story. You know what I mean? And as Mr. Hemphill there was saying, Tyson didn't go to prison to knock anybody out. No, he would have got fucking stabbed. I mean, you're not going to go to, you're going to have to shower at some point. You're going to have to go to sleep at some point. And you're going to be dead.
Yeah. I understand Tyson wasn't even allowed to do push-ups during his stay.
Yeah, they make it a point to say a couple times, you're one guy. I wish they had gone a little bit deeper into that. They tell him a bunch of times, yo, you can't just come in and do this. You're in a different world. You can't just come around punching everybody.
And then he still does it like he is Teflon. Nothing.
Yeah, like he just keeps doing it. I think that's where the film's weakest point is. The champ, played by Ving Rhames, like there's no logical reason for him to do that more than once, right? Like you have the gangster who is trying to, and I think it's Peter Falk who's playing the gangster.
Peter Falk.
Yeah. So Falk is the big boxing aficionado. He's putting this together, and then I think it's in Act 3 where he goes to both fighters and gives them a reason to fight. He offers Wesley a cut of the money to help his family on the outside. And then he goes to Ving Rhames and says, hey, I can get you out. Do this fight and I'll get you out. That's enough reason for the fight to happen. You don't need Ving Rhames' character, the champion, to be an a-hole for the whole movie. Like, there's no reason for it. It makes it, I think it's a way more compelling story if you have two people who don't really want to fight. You know,
I think with Snipes, it wasn't set up very well, though. There wasn't really a lot of background. He talks about it. It sounds like a noble thing for him to do and everything, but we see none of it. He just says a sentence of it. And it's like, oh, okay, he's got a sister that doesn't have skills and has some kids and things like that. But I mean, that's something where if you want to shoot a flashback, there you go. I mean, set up that emotion component, because apparently, I want to say it was Weinstein that produced this movie. He wanted Snipes to, or his company Miramax bought the releasing rights to this movie, and he wanted Snipes to come back and film some scenes to make his character more sympathetic, and Snipes refused. So interesting.
Snipes' character is barely in his own movie. Now, to be fair, he spends a lot of time in solitary confinement. We'll get to that in a minute, but like Fisher Stevens, his cut man, actually has more screen time, has more dialogue. You actually know a little bit more about his character, whereas without the flashbacks, we don't know why Wesley is there. We don't know what his motivation is. We don't know why he is very calm. All we know is that he's 67-0.
Yeah. A visit from his sister would have went a long way.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I agree 100%.
Like, even, I mean, you had the flashback of him committing his crime, but that doesn't make any sense. He lost his temper because, and we don't even know who the woman was. Right. Was that his sister? Was that his wife? We don't even know who she was. Right. He lost his temper because someone somewhere was having an intimate moment that bugged him. For all we know, he could have been walking down the neighborhood and heard something coming out the window and just decided to kill a guy. and we don't know. So I think it would have went a longer way if, like, maybe his sister was being accosted, and that adds more reason for him to fight the champion, because now the champion is in jail accused of a crime that he killed a man over. I like that idea a lot. There's a lot of, and then you have his sister visit, and every time he sees her, he's reminded of why he's in there. Like, there's so many different ways to tell this story. Where I think there was so intent, like, they said for a long time that Walter Hill wanted to make a boxing movie. And I think he was so intent on a boxing movie that he forgot everything else besides the boxing. And it's just, I want these two guys to fight, and I got these two great actors, and I'm gonna make this boxing movie, and then everything else just went out the window, and there's no reason for him to fight. And like I said, there's no, even like I said, Ving Rhames, he's got this weird idea of what it's supposed to be in jail, and it's actually completely wrong in real life and according to the logic of the movie. And people are trying to correct his behavior for the whole movie, and he doesn't. So I think that's what holds it back. But I don't think everyone, including Mr. Hill, wasn't working at 100%. Like Master Lin said, he was running out of steam, and maybe this just wasn't his best effort in terms of writing, especially.
When they state that the further they got into the story, the more they got away from the Mike Tyson character. That's debatable.
I was going to say, did they say that, or a reviewer say that, or something? Because I don't think that's true.
That's in my notes here. But so take it all with a grain of salt, because my notes usually come from the IMDb.
If Hill's saying he thought they got away from the boxing to focus on the Tyson thing, or vice versa, I think the Tyson thing is always in focus throughout the whole movie.
It feels like it's just overshadowing the entire time.
Right. Yeah.
Once they got the treatment done, they handed it to Wesley Snipes, and he was immediately cool with it. And he said, "I would do either part. I don't care." But he definitely was 100% into this movie. And then they got to Ving Rhames, and Ving had done a stage show with Wesley on Broadway at some point in time, so he was immediately on board as well. But he absolutely wanted to play the Iceman. Peter Falk, what's going on with him?
I think with Peter Falk, I think he had a good time as an actor doing this. He seems like he's having fun with it. He's basically a foul-mouthed Mickey. I mean, to be honest, that's what he came across as me. He was Mickey from Rocky. He just said fuck a lot and stuff like that. That was the only difference, really. I don't think he broke new ground or brought something exciting to the movie or anything like that. I think he probably had fun with his performance, which I didn't think was particularly great, but you know, he's foul-mouthed Mickey. So we have him. I think the best actor in the movie, I think, is Fisher Stevens, to be honest. I mean, what a versatile freaking man. I mean, he can do it all. He can do horror, he can do action, he can do comedy. Fisher Stevens is an underrated actor, and I'll always like Short Circuit. Don't rip on it. I don't care if you don't like it. Short Circuit's Johnny Five.
Yeah, all he did was play the role they gave him. It's not his fault. You know, that's on the company. Like you made that casting. Fisher did good with what they gave him. So
Fisher Stevens has my favorite incident with Ving Rhams, where eventually Rhams punches him right in the chest, where his chest concaves around Ving Rhams's fist. There's a dent in it when he's lying back in the against his friends there. Fisher Stevens should have more to do here. Peter Falk should have more to do here. Would you be surprised, and I'm just speculating here, I don't have any information on this, Peter Falk's character probably found out he had cancer and was going to die in a matter of months, and then wanted to see one last boxing match?
Yeah. Well, I mean, his character probably should have been, once again, the linchpin of the movie. Like they even had that narration at the end by his concierge, which sounds like he should have been the guy narrating the movie. It's really weird because it's changing the POV. At first, Ving Rhames is your POV character, then Wesley's your POV character. Like you could have had it where the concierge is the POV character, and Peter Falk is the linchpin of the movie. Once again, he gives them both a reason to fight. Right? It doesn't matter whether Ving Rhames' character is guilty or not. It doesn't matter whether Wesley Snipes' character even wants to fight him. He seems like the reluctant dude. He fights because he's really good at it. He's on there for life. He has a great scene. Wesley Snipes has a great scene where his character says, "It's all a prison. I don't care if I'm in solitary or not. I'm in prison." He's lost the lust for life aside from being in his own head. So these characters are ambivalent. The only person with a driving thing in the movie is Peter Falk's Mr. Ripstein is the only one with a burning desire to see the focal point of the movie happen. So
he's in jail on tax evasion, whereas we get this big speech at the beginning of the film where only murderers, rapists, and arson.
And like he's in there for tax evasion. Well, it makes sense. It's like an Al Capone thing, right? We know he's done all these other things. He's gotten people killed, but they got him arrested for tax evasion. It's just like Al Capone. So Al Capone still went to Alcatraz with all the murderers and thieves. So, but he could have been the linchpin of the movie. You know,
I want to see Mr. Hemphill's Undisputed. That's the movie I want to see. I want to see as if he made the movie. I love the angle of Wesley Snipes. Maybe sister is assaulted. Then the man he has to fight is in there for assaulting a female. There's that great tension there for the characters. You get it narrated by the should have been linchpin Peter Falk in the movie. That's the movie I want to see.
Yeah, it's a good. This movie has like it's what is that HGTV show Good Bones? This movie has good bones. It just needs, I think it needs to be remodeled. Like
we keep talking about the writing, and one name that keeps popping up is David Wilson. Now he's actually helped Walter Hill on many of his films, but he's also responsible for Aliens, the Alien franchise, as well as Tales from the Crypt, and a kick-ass movie podcast reference to The Perfect Weapon is what he came off of. Len, we talked earlier about stunt coordinator. We got Cole McKay, who's taking care of that. And this guy has like 300 credits to his name. So his top 4 that'll resonate with everybody here is Star Trek 6, Ring of Fire 2, the Shia LaBeouf biopic Honey Boy, and Transformers 3.
I'll forgive him for Transformers 3.
He was just getting paid, man. I gotta buy a house here. I gotta buy a house. I mentioned that this movie doesn't know what it wants to be. It's got multiple posters. It was only in seven territories. And in Spain, it's called Invicto. In France, it's called Invincible. The Danish are calling it Iceman, which really doesn't help its future sequels. The Polish call it Champion, and Japan calls it Deadlock. The visuals on the poster, and I'm sorry guys, it's an audio show, but most of the posters actually just have a 2-shot. One of Ving Rhames' head, one of Wesley Snipes' head. But then sometimes there's a casino in the background. Sometimes there's an explosion with a helicopter. I mean, there's a light bulb explodes at one point, and they do shuttle Ving in on a helicopter. I don't know. China, for some reason, has a silhouette of a guy doing what would look like a jump kick, but is just a Superman punch. There's a lot of strange things going on in this. Like I said, I wanted to look up prison boxing programs, and it's hard to find anything on it. Like at one point in 1981 in New York, they just discontinued the whole program. San Quentin might have a program. It's unclear, but Danny Trejo was a champion of their league at one point in time. There's a prison guard boxing league, but their webpage is just, it's broken. There's a lot of weird things going on here. We did mention Master P, C Murder, Silk the Shocker, and Boz are they're the prison rap gang. Silk the Shocker and C Murder are both serving time right now.
Yeah, he told himself C Murder is in jail for murder. So yeah. Apparently it wasn't his name. It was like one of those kindergarten books. C Murder, run. Run, murder, run.
Guys, what's a good scene in this movie?
I like the end fight scene. I think it's not terribly done. It doesn't go over the deep end, but yet, you know, what we don't see, and they want to make a boxing film, when you choreograph these things, you have to make them exciting for movie purposes and stuff too. But I noticed there was no tie-ups. There was nothing like that kinds of stuff. These guys are just throwing haymakers and connecting to the body and head all the time. And once in a while, you'll see his guard up and he'll hit his forearms and stuff, which is, you know, happens all the time. But there was no tie-ups or things like that going on. You know, I think they probably should have been thrown into the choreography a little bit. But I mean, who am I? But I would have done something like that here and there. But I think the end fight scene is good. But overall, yeah, I do. It's probably the best thing in the movie for me, because I thought the story was beyond pedestrian. I didn't like the Tyson angle at all kind of thing. Yeah, I'll go with the final fight between which boxing fans, fight fans, that fight would never happen in real life anywhere, because Ving Rhams outweighs Wesley Snipes by probably 40 pounds. So, there are weight classes. That's why it's not barbaric tough man things and things like that. That's why we have athletic commissions to sanction these things and put weight divisions and stuff like that. And Wesley Snipes is not in Ving Rhams' weight division for this. So
surprisingly, though, in a real fight, I think I'd still bet on Wesley due to his martial arts skill. Like I'd still bet on, like, but yeah, this fight would never happen in real life. As a matter of fact, I was looking at the notes, and they actually used some film trickery to even make them look the same size. Ving Rhams was hunched over while Wesley fought with his chest out, so that they could even look like they were remotely the same size. Because I think Ving Rhams is about 4 or 5 inches taller than Wesley too. Like this would just, you know, this is like asking Roy Jones Jr. to fight one of the Klitschko's. It's like it just wouldn't happen. Yeah, I have to agree with Master Lin. I think like the best scene is actually the boxing match at the end. It's actually better than the boxing matches before, because at least the lack of clinches and the lack of actual boxing in the last match makes sense, because they're using these old rules that the gangsters made up or got pre-Queensberry or whatever and tried to bring back because it's a purist. The boxing in the beginning, it looks kind of Rocky-ish. Like that, like in the beginning, they're taking headshots to headshots. Ving Rhams' champion is beating his contender, and he gives him like 6 really good headshots. I've never seen a clean 6-punch combo leave a guy standing unless like his body froze up. I've never seen someone take 6 clean shots to the head in a combination and not get knocked out, and that happens at the beginning of the movie. Like it's the boxing, like the matches that they show that are supposed to be professional boxing matches look less realistic than the final fight, the climactic fight. Well, it's not the final fight because we see Ving Rhams fight again, but the climactic fight at the end.
Let's see. I already said my favorite scene was Ving Rhams punching Fisher Stevens in the chest. What's the worst thing about this movie, guys?
Well, for me, it's just the lack of not knowing really what it wants to be. And I think maybe the overconfidence of kind of the crew. I mean, obviously Walter Hill seemed like a pretty confident guy that he had a good movie here and things like that. That kind of hurts though, when at the end of the day you don't kind of thing, or can't recognize the spots that you need to. It's still a movie at the end of the day. You have to have certain elements to, I think Wesley's character not being really developed and things like that, I think hurts. I think Rhams coming off too much as the bad guy, too much of the Tyson thing, stuff like that. All those things. I don't think the Tyson angle works, and I know that's why they wanted to make this movie. And I don't think it works here. I really don't. And then at times I felt it really weird that, yes, Ving Rhames comes across as kind of a jerk and stuff like that, but you really don't. He's not in prison. He's not going to prison for murder, though, like Wesley Snipes. I mean, they both did terrible things. But unfortunately, in our justice system, he's going to be, the Iceman's getting out in a couple of years. Snipes is never getting out, kind of thing. And yeah, how do you feel as a viewer? How are you supposed to feel? I mean, who's the real villain? Are they both villains? To me, they're both kind of villains. when I watch it, there is no good guy, bad guy. I don't think, Wesley Snipes still did something terrible. And I think they want you to root for Snipes. I think he's supposed to be the protagonist. But again, this is a weak area of the film for me because I wasn't really rooting for either of them. And so if it would have went to that 80s style exploitation, dirty, grindy cinema, you don't need a good guy, bad guy. You can set up the story, have it be the prison fights. You can still have the big climatic fight at the end, but you don't really need a good guy, bad guy in those things. You just have a story that plays out. I wish it probably would have went more in that direction for me, even though I mentioned movies like with the character Too Sweet, who obviously is the protagonist in the Penitentiary series and stuff. You kind of root for him, but you should check those out. They get a little crazy, but the first and second one, they're pretty cool. I like the third one because they just didn't give a shit, and there's crazy midgets fighting, and it's just a crazy movie. But I love them all. Penitentiaries worth checking out. I think overall that's where it sits with me. I wish the Tyson thing wasn't done. I wish the good guy, bad guy thing, because I think they're both bad guys. I know Snipes is now doing Legos in his solitary confinement or whatever the hell he was doing in there, making the paper origami or whatever the hell he was doing in there. That doesn't make him a good guy. It makes him accept his fate, maybe, and try
sociopath.
Yeah, exactly. It makes him a sociopath. He's like, yeah.
Because at no point does he ever reflect on I kind of wish I hadn't done that.
But you know what, Kush? You say that might turn him to the audience as a good guy kind of thing. You know what I mean? When you do stuff like that. If you're sorry, did Wesley Snipes repent? And I'm not saying he should have, but nothing like that is set up to try to make him a good guy kind of thing. And I don't think the flashbacks and stuff that the Miramax wanted Snipes to shoot that he refused, I don't know if that would really do much of anything either. I mean, sure, something is better than nothing that might have helped, but I'm talking about you're going to have to reconstruct his character here, kind of thing. But yeah, I think the weird good guy, bad guy thing in the Tyson thing kind of ruined it for me.
It's funny, like a movie that is so unsure about what it wants to be. I'm surprised that it only has 2 writers. Like you would think this movie had 7 writers or something like that, and went through multiple revisions. Because like I said, there's a whole scene where the concierge, or Peter Falk's gangster, is getting instructions from guys on the outside. And I'm like, why are we seeing this? Like this has nothing to do with Ving Rhames, has nothing to do with Wesley Snipes Monroe. Like we don't know neither of their characters, and the characters we've been presented a story where these are the 2 primary characters. I can't even say protagonist and antagonist because, like Master Lynn said, they both suck. They're both technically they're both guilty of heinous crimes. Like any decent person, if you root for them, because you're rooting for the actor, right? Their characters give you no reason to root for them, right? So very true. Like they're playing heinous people, so there's no reason, like some sort of logical reason for Wesley Snipes doing what he did would have tipped the scales in his favor. I don't necessarily like the idea of turning a woman who's talking about her being attacked into a liar, because too much of that happens in real life. But something to legitimize Ving. I mean, Ving Rhames is saying at the beginning of the movie, I didn't do that, and then he loses his temper with the interviewer. Like he's really just not a good person from the jump. I'm like, this makes no sense. So I think
he has a lot of bipolarisms going on there.
Exactly. And it would be totally okay if neither of them were the POV and the person telling the story. Right? If Peter Falk's gangster was the engine to all this, and this kid who maybe got in trouble, or even who is it? Is it John Seda who's
Chewie.
Yeah, if maybe one of those people, like you have a guy who just stole a car, right? And he's stuck in this thing. Maybe if he was the guy. Character. Yeah. Like, yeah, Wes Studi is Ving Rhames' cellmate, correct?
Yep.
Right.
Yes.
And I think actually he has the best performance in the movie from any of the actors. I think Wes Studi's pretty good in it. I think he's above the material here kind of thing. I thought his performance was pretty good. They don't give him a ton to do, but I thought Studi was pretty good in this.
He's pretty understated, and I think that's what it is. It's not over the top, and maybe because they didn't pay too much attention to him, I'm almost afraid of what would happen if he got more lines, because maybe he would have been as over the top or as weird as all the other characters. But if maybe he was the POV person, right? Like if someone who wasn't horrible and hadn't committed a crime that resulted in willful loss of life was the person who was telling the story, and then you get to see them be a witness to the fight and then get out, like the concierge or Wes Studi's roommate, something like that. I think that would have been a lot better. But the fact that it brings you two horrible people and you can't, like, if you think about it, you really can't root for either of them, and it doesn't really know who is the main character of the movie. I think that lack of cohesion is really what ruins it. I think if like just Walter Hill maybe wrote it, or just David Gillard wrote it, maybe, I don't know, that'd have been better, but I think it would know what it wants to be.
My problem with it is a lot of inconsistencies and then a lot of repetition, which this movie is 96 minutes, and it's a dry 96 minutes, because we have things where, okay, I'm going to go on a vacation and I don't want to know anything about this fight. Okay, now the fight's canceled. Okay, now the fight's back on and I'm still going on vacation. Oh, what happened to the mayor? You know, Wesley Snipes is devoid of character. You guys remember, he only a few years prior to this, he did a movie where he played a vampire that just whispers all day long, and he pops in that scene. He does nothing in this. More inconsistencies. We've actually talked about it a couple times. We never went further than his solitary confinement. They weld the door shut, which I can never figure out why. He's not the Hulk. He's it's if he has a medical condition, he's fucked. Like, what? Also, who's giving him toothpicks and glue in solitary? What is going on here? There's just
technically those are weapons, right?
Yes.
Like
he could easily hurt himself with them.
Yeah, I mean, and like the welding is like, you put one of the most absurd things in the movie to you just mentioned. I was like, they welded him in. I'm like, so I mean, I didn't see a toilet. Like,
no, we did not see a toilet.
They welded him in. Like, what is the point of that? Like,
yeah.
The
London prize rules, they all negate each other. Like, there's no ref except for the warden on the outside. There's no rounds except if you get knocked down, we get 60-second break. Bare knuckles, well, all right, maybe that one's fine. They have to renegotiate. Yeah, 6 ounce gloves might be a little better here. You know, the more we talk about the more disappointed I get. But again, seven international markets out of a very strange round 200 movies in 2002. It ranked 173. That's in between Boat Trip and something called Possession. Top 5 movies for 2002 are from 5 up: Men in Black 2, Star Wars 2, the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man, Harry Potter 2, and Lord of the Rings 2. Now, this movie had a $20 million budget. Its run would be about 14 million, so it's technically a bomb, but for some reason, it spawns a direct-to-video franchise. We take the Iceman, Ving Rhames character, and then for some reason, we have Michael Jai White playing him, and we're gonna find out more about that in a future episode of the Kick-Ass Movie Podcast down the road. But that's where we go. We seem to trade off villains. Guys, Undisputed, 2002. Do we have anything more to say about this?
Yeah, I'm really sorry it wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. That's all I can say. Yeah.
I would say one thing, I instead of being on a downer note, whether it's an A-list boxing film or a Z-list boxing film, everybody should pick something positive. Say, Mr. Hemphill, name a boxing film you should recommend to everybody. Doesn't matter if it's Rocky, whatever it is, pick your boxing film.
All right, I'm going to go back to our last episode and say $1 Million Baby again. Go watch that again. Like, if you haven't watched it after listening to our last episode, please watch it. It's one of my favorites, and it's well directed, well acted, and the boxing's actually awesome in it.
There you go. I'm going to say Real Steel. It's got robots. It's got Hugh Jackman, the chick from Lost. It's going to be a good time. It's fun for the whole family.
Good choice.
I am going to go with a B movie from 1989. starring the late Edward Albert, playing a character called Punchy, who is pretty cool. It is the star of the film is George Rivero, a shredded dude at like 50 years old when he made the movie Fist Fighter. I believe he's still alive today. B-movie legend in his own right, Matthias Hughes, known for I Come in Peace, is our antagonist Rhino, along with the late Chuck Connors, I believe, is the villain, kind of a businessman villain in it. But it is none other than 1989's Fist Fighter. And I highly, highly, highly recommend seeing it. It is a dirty, grimy B-movie that is a good time, but it is extremely hard to find. 1989 Fist Fighter. Again, it's a prison movie. So I'm doing homework here, Kush. I know when I pick a film. He goes to prison. He fights a crazy, hairy ape-man beast creature, which is out of left field. It's a crazy movie that you'll have fun with. Yeah, see 1989's Fist Fighter. I think you'll have a good time.
Listeners, it is available in full on YouTube. Just found it. I'm watching it tonight, Master Lynn.
Check it out. Expect something wild and crazy.
All right.
But I
One
love
quick
it. I love it.
discrepancy here is Walter Hill keeps saying is continued quoted as, I wanted to make a boxing film, but his directorial debut was something called Hard Way with Charles Bronson and James Coburn.
Great movie, Hard Times.
Would you consider that a boxing movie? Because he's on the WTF podcast with Mark Maron. It came up, and I consider that like an underground fighting movie. And it's like, I mean, we're nitpicking here, Walt. Come on.
Yeah, I think he's nitpicking a little bit. I'm not sure it's a boxing movie, but Hard Times is much like Fist Fighter that I just mentioned. Obviously more slick and polished than a movie like Fist Fighter, but yeah, Hard Times is awesome. But man, I'd say he did like maybe 6 like really good movies. Hard Times would be one of them. I'm a big Charles Bronson fan, big Polish guy from Pennsylvania. Come on, I have to like Charles Bronson. So, but I like Bronson's movie. I like The Long Riders I mentioned, I really like. Obviously, The Warriors is probably his masterpiece. I think we could all agree on that. I think people forget he did Brewster's Millions. That's kind of not his shtick kind of thing, but he did it. So, and I probably his last good movie, man, I mean, I really like Bullet to the Head, but I realize the limitations with that one as well. But Red Heat, maybe?
Red Heat's a lot of fun.
Red Heat's probably his last like really good movie, probably for I guess.
Len, what do you want to promote?
Well, as I said, I'm filming Pact of Vengeance now. It'll be out next year, probably in the springtime. But obviously, people can see my movies. I'm putting more and more free downloads so they can download them and watch them when they want on my Patreon channel. So much stuff of my stuff gets taken down off of Amazon for whatever reason. Even I think Challenge of 5 Gauntlets might not be on Amazon anymore. It's a rental now, or it was Prime. Now it's not Prime. I don't own that one. It's a distributor has that one. So, regardless, you can circumvent all that stuff by just joining my Patreon and say F you to the man and just come directly to the source that makes these movies for you. And that is me on patreon.com/KillerWolfFilms. It's only $2. I have a $5 campaign, which I'm sure is still going on as we speak, where I give out autographed 11x17 posters for Pact of Vengeance, and you get an obliterators like collector's patch kind of thing. So that's still going on, but that's the big thing I'd say to promote, support independent artists, if they've got Patreons and things like that, or Patreon pages or campaigns up, it's really a good way to do it, because I couldn't tell you how many people I come across that are like, man, your stuff's on Amazon stuff. It doesn't mean I'm making money off of that stuff. You know what I mean? Amazon pays me about 2 cents a watch kind of thing. So if you make it through Challenge of 5 Gauntlets for the 90-minute runtime, you just got me 2 cents. And I appreciate everybody, but at the same time, a way that to really support the artists is go through their Patreon campaigns and support them that way. And that is, of course, Patreon's taking their pound of flesh in that situation. But sometimes it's better to stay with the devil, kind of thing.
All right. Jaimel, what do you want to plug?
As always, I'm trying to make comic books. And like Master Lynn said, it'd be great if you come by from me directly, because we give away at least 50% every time they're distributed. So as always, I'm on npccomics.com. You can go to Comixology if you like digital comics too. They're available there, but you can also download them directly from our website, npccomics.com. You get physical or digital copies. And by the time you're hearing this, my entire series, my new series, Sunlar, should be complete and available for you on both platforms.
I do a weekly show called The Microdose. You can catch us every Friday at noon California time. I'm also going to recommend you guys check out Kush and Kind #5, where we talk Walter Hill's last directorial feature, The Assignment with Michelle Rodriguez. That thing is crazy.
I
Did you see that? Yeah.
It's got Sigourney Weaver in it too. Holy cow!
Yeah. Another disappointment, unfortunately. But that's Glenn's 2 cents there.
Folks, I've been Kush. You've been you.
From the BosNet family.
Man, don't do that because it looks terrible.